Love can be beautiful, but it also can be dangerous if you get involved with the wrong person. Today we're going to talk about a case that shows how love, usually seen as a blessing, can turn into something harmful and dangerous when it's mixed with unhealthy emotions like obsession or inability to let go. Back in 2023, a young woman was killed in a foreign country because her ex-boyfriend couldn't get over the relationship after it ended. Ladies and gentlemen, let's delve into the case of Sandra CRUZ.
Sandra CRUZ was born and raised in Spain, alongside her parents and two brothers. She always had a remarkable desire to help people, a trait she showed even as a young girl. But her life took a tragic turn when her father passed away because of illness during her teenage years. This loss motivated Sandra to better care for her family. Fueled by this motivation, Sandra dreamed of pursuing higher education and becoming a nurse. She had a specific goal in mind, to study in the United States, where she had an uncle and aunt. Her excellent grades and determination eventually convinced her mother to let her pursue her education in America. Sandra was overjoyed when she got accepted into the University of Washington. She packed her bags, said her goodbyes, and flew to the United States. Adapting to this new setting was a challenge, but her classmates found her pleasant. It was here that she met Fernando de Maria. Fernando, also of Spanish descent, had moved to the United States to study psychology at the University of Washington, starting a year before Sandra. The two grew close and eventually started dating, initially seeming compatible. However, as their relationship developed, Fernando de Maria began to show a different side. Sandra noticed that he was controlling, obsessive, and possessive. He would dictate who she could speak with, spend time with, and would frequently call her excessively. This behavior exhausted Sandra and strained their relationship. In contrast to Sandra's growing discomfort, Fernando de Maria was content and wanted to marry her. Fernando's parents claimed that Sandra once sought their blessing for marriage. However, they were aware of opposition from Sandra's family, largely due to financial disparities between the families. These claims, however, remain uncorroborated and unverified. Now, focusing on Sandra, she was evidently experiencing severe restrictions in her day-to-day life. Enduring 9 months of such constraint was unbearable, so Sandra resolved to leave this unhealthy relationship. She broke up with Fernando de Maria in early 2023, a decision that visibly upset Fernando. Although he may have tried to persuade her otherwise, Sandra stood firm in her decision and walked away for good. After the breakup, Fernando was consumed by feelings of anger and betrayal. He began harassing Sandra online, sending her daily messages filled with insults and threats. Furthermore, Sandra noticed that he was stalking her, both on campus and near her workplace. Even though the relationship had ended, Fernando de Maria's presence continued to impose restrictions on her life. Unable to tolerate this situation any longer, Sandra reported Fernando to the police in February for her safety. She informed the police that they had separated and provided them with threatening messages and informing them about the stalking. The police responded by warning Fernando de Maria about his behavior, emphasizing the consequences if it continued. He complied, but only temporarily. On March 6, 2023, in Washington, United States, Sandra CRUZ didn't show up for her job and she hadn't informed anyone in advance. This was unusual as she had never been absent or even late before. Her colleagues concerned about her well-being attempted to call her, but without success. Wondering if she might be ill, they reached out to her family in Washington. However, her family was equally alarmed, revealing that Sandra hadn't returned home the previous night, and they hadn't seen her since. This raised serious concerns for everyone involved. The frantic search for Sandra CRUZ began with people calling her and sending messages, trying to gather any information about her whereabouts. It was clear that Sandra wouldn't just run away from home, making the situation even more suspicious. When these efforts proved fruitless, the search party turned to the police, hoping they could help locate Sandra. The police, who were already aware of Sandra's situation because of her previous complaints about her ex-boyfriend, considered him a person of interest. It seemed plausible that the man who had been harassing her might be connected to her disappearance. Consequently, on March 6, the police questioned Fernando. He initially acted surprised and denied any knowledge of Sandra's whereabouts, claiming he had been home all day and had not seen her. However, his alibi lacked verification, prompting the police to probe further as the search continued. The next day, Fernando's story changed. While he initially claimed he hadn't seen Sandra, he then admitted to having seen her, but with a shocking twist. He claimed that Sandra had killed herself, but instead of reporting it, he said he took her body to Flinders Ranges for burial. This bizarre claim raised further suspicion. Flinders Ranges, being a vast and remote area, seemed an unlikely place for someone to bury a body, unless they had something to hide. Fernando's inability to maintain a consistent story further eroded his credibility. He then added a strange twist to his tale, claiming that he and Sandra had both planned to die, but he backed out at the last moment. According to him, Sandra went through with a plan alone, after which he buried her. This series of shifting narratives and implausible explanations made the situation increasingly suspicious, leading the police to question his involvement in Sandra's disappearance and the circumstances surrounding her alleged death. The investigation into Sandra's disappearance took a critical turn when the police confiscated Fernando's phone. As they examined the messages exchanged between him and Sandra, they found numerous spam messages from Fernando de Maria, indicating his relentless pursuit and unwillingness to let Sandra live her life independently. Among these messages, a particularly alarming one was uncovered. "Your bad luck that I am still alive, cheap, wait and watch, you will get the answer. Each and every single one will get the answer." Fortunately, Fernando cooperated with the police and led them to the site where he claimed to have buried Sandra's body. The journey to the location took about 4 hours. Upon arrival, the police unearthed Sandra's body from a shallow grave. Surprisingly, her body had not decomposed significantly, as it had only been a day since her murder. However, the discovery was gruesome. Sandra's hands and feet were bound, and she had a cut on her neck, though it was not lethal. The autopsy revealed a harrowing detail. Sandra was buried alive, as soil was found in a respiratory system, indicating she had inhaled soil while buried. Further investigation led to the acquisition of CCTV footage showing Fernando's activities on the day of the crime. He was seen purchasing a jerry can, tape, gloves, shovel, and cable ties from a local hardware store, appearing remarkably calm and collected. Another piece of footage captured him driving a car late at night, which was later determined to be his friend's vehicle. It was suspected that Sandra was in the back of this car at the time. The compilation of evidence, including the CCTV footage, Fernando's inconsistent stories, the condition in which Sandra's body was found, and the items he purchased, presented a strong case for the prosecution. These findings painted a deeply disturbing picture of the events leading up to Sandra's tragic end, and pointed towards Fernando's involvement in her death. In Fernando de Maria's trial, his representative, Alex Brown, attempted to present a narrative, suggesting that Fernando was not in a sound state of mind at the time of the crime. According to Alex, Fernando's mental disturbance began after the end of his relationship with Sandra. Alex claimed that Fernando was incapable of making rational decisions and understanding others' wishes, which led to his impulsive and destructive actions. Additionally, Alex asserted that Fernando experienced hallucinations following Sandra's death, seemingly pushing the narrative of insanity in an effort to mitigate the severity of his punishment. However, the evidence suggested otherwise. The prosecution argued that Fernando did not have diminished responsibility due to insanity. His calm demeanor in the CCTV footage and the meticulous planning of the crime, including the disposal of evidence, indicated a clear and calculated approach. This countered the defense's claim of impaired judgment or mental instability. Fernando initially pleaded not guilty to the charges of kidnapping and murdering Sandra CRUZ. However, in March 2023, he changed his plea to guilty. The prosecution and the judges strongly condemned his actions. The court described Fernando's actions as outrageously barbaric and an act of brutal vengeance. They noted the shallow cut on Sandra's neck and concluded that Fernando had buried her alive, intending for her to suffer a slow and agonizing death. It's indeed unusual that the exact timeline of Sandra's final moments remained unclear. Despite Fernando de Maria's guilty plea, he did not provide a detailed account of how he executed the kidnapping, murder, and burial of Sandra's body. It appears that the police were unable to extract these specifics from him, possibly due to his right to remain silent. On August 20, 2023, Judge Brian Hamilton delivered the sentence in the case of Sandra CRUZ's murder. Fernando received a life sentence with no possibility of parole for 23 years. When Fernando is eventually released from prison, he will be in his 40s. As of now, there's no information regarding whether Fernando de Maria or his defense team plan to appeal the sentence. The tragic loss of Sandra CRUZ left her family in profound grief. Her aspiration and her desire to live a life of independence and dignity were tragically cut short. The tragic loss of Sandra CRUZ leaves us with many questions, especially about the response to her initial pleas for help. If her concerns had been taken more seriously, or acted upon more promptly, it might have prevented this tragedy. Her story makes us think about the crucial importance of timely and effective intervention in cases of domestic harassment and stalking. As we remember Sandra as the sweet, hardworking person she was, let's also reflect on how society and law enforcement can better safeguard individuals in similar situations. That's all for today. Thanks for watching, and if you liked our video, please like and subscribe to our channel.